Hey guys, I got another archetype video for you. And today we're going to be talking about an archetype that I haven't seen on YouTube yet. And that is the Shadowcaster archetype. There's a lot to this archetype, so I just want to get right into it. Let's dive in. So before we get into the dedication, I do want to talk about something that you might not realize if you just look at the Shadowcaster archetype. The Shadowcaster archetype actually gives you access to a couple of things that no other archetype does. The Shadowhound Animal Companion and the Shadow Familiar. The Shadowhound Animal Companion is fantastic at intimidation and can also make you and itself concealed with its support benefit. Its advanced maneuver doesn't even need language to intimidate multiple foes, and as such doesn't take a penalty for the enemy not understanding the hound's language. You can of course also pick up the Shadow Familiar. This grants you a few familiar abilities that aren't available to any other familiar. It can use an action to become Shadow, giving it resistance to all damage except force. This also allows it to slip through spaces at least 2 inches wide or 1 inch if it squeezes. It can also hide or sneak in a creature's or object's shadow. Also, you can give your Shadow Familiar the ability to make a foe enfeebled if it hits, with what is essentially a spell attack roll. This does, however, have to be in melee, so keep that in mind. So in order to take the Shadowcaster dedication, you need to be a spellcaster of some type. But honestly, the best spellcasters for this archetype are the Witch and, believe it or not, the Druid. As the Witch will let you pick up that Shadow Familiar without extra feats, and the Druid will let you pick up that Shadowhound Animal Companion, but more importantly, the Primal list doesn't have any shadow spells. Meaning that you're going to get extra spells for your list if you take a feat I'm going to cover later on. But taking the Shadowcaster dedication means you can no longer cast spells with light traits, which means spells like Chromatic Armor and Prismatic Wall are off the table. You also gain the Cloak of Shadow Domain spell, and a focus pool of 1 point. Your focus spells from this archetype are the same tradition as the one that you use to qualify for the Shadowcaster dedication. Cloak of Shadow allows you to touch one willing creature and give them a cloak that reduces bright light in a 20-foot emanation to dim light, thus making it easier for that creature to stealth. The target can also remove the cloak in order to leave it behind as a decoy. But if anyone picks it up, then the spell immediately ends. Obviously, this is great for you since you're a Shadowcaster and you probably want to hide. However, it's even better for the rogue in your party, as this will allow them to get their sneak attack pretty much no matter where they are, as they can use the concealment that this spell gives them to hide. Next, of course, we do have the Familiar feat, allowing us to pick up that Shadow Familiar once we pick up enough familiar abilities. But I'm sure you guys all know how familiars work, so I'm going to move on to Shadow Spells. This feat is the reason why Druids make such good Shadowcasters. You add Replicate, Shadow Army, Shadow Blast, Shadow Projectile, Shadow Raid, Shadow Siphon, and Shadow Walk to your spell list. This means that you can cast these spells even if they aren't normally on your spell list. These are all fantastic spells to pick up, especially if you're a primal caster. For level 6 feats, we've got Enhanced Familiar, making it easier for you to get that Shadow Familiar. Also at level 6, we've got Disciple of Shade. This gives us another focus spell and increases our focus pool. The Inscrutable Mask Domain spell gives us a bonus on deception checks to lie or feint, intimidation checks to demoralize, and stealth checks to hide in dim light or darkness. Unfortunately, this one only affects you, but it does last for a good amount of time, and intimidation checks to demoralize is a good thing to do. And you can make them flat-footed to the entire team in other ways. And of course, being stealthy is a part of this archetype. So getting a bonus to that is always good. Shadow Spell is a meta magic feat. When you cast a spell with a shadow trait, if you spend an extra action, you can choose one creature that was affected by the spell. That creature either gets a +2 on stealth checks, or takes a -2 penalty on perception checks. This lasts for 1 round. You do resolve the actual spell before applying this effect. Also, if the target is an enemy, it's only affected if you succeeded on your spell attack roll or they failed their saving throw. So essentially, you're either making it harder for the enemy to see the target, or you're making it easier for the target to stealth around. Either way, this is a great option for rogues and any other class that wants to sneak around. Shadow Reservoir is a little complicated, so I'm going to try to make it simple for you. Basically, you choose one spell for every level up to 2 levels below your highest spell slot. These spells must be on your spell list. However, regardless of how you normally cast spells, you can spontaneously cast the spells you chose from your Shadow Reservoir for 1 spell slot, of the appropriate level, of course. If you're a prepared spellcaster, then you lose the spell that you prepared in that slot. However, spells you cast in this way may be able to be disbelieved. If the spell required a spell attack roll, use the higher of their AC or their will DC. If the spell required a saving throw, then the targets use their will saving throw or the normal saving throw for the spell, whichever is higher. So essentially what this spell does is it gives you a certain amount of spells from your spell list that you can use spontaneously, even if you're a prepared spellcaster. And it gives spontaneous casters even more spells to work with, making this a fantastic feat for any spellcaster. Unfortunately, it doesn't give you more spell slots, but it does give you more versatility with your spells. Okay, it's time to talk about level 12. At this level, you can take Secrets of Shadow, giving you 1 more spell for your Shadow Reservoir. In addition, this feat gives you negative resistance equal to the highest level spell you can cast from spell slots. Or if you're like a Damphir or something else that's harmed by positive energy, you get positive resistance instead. So essentially this is just another spell and negative or positive resistance depending on the character. Then also at level 12, we've got a very important feat as it's a prerequisite for 3 other feats. That being Shadow Magic. This gives you 1 of 2 focus spells of your choice. You can either take Dance of Darkness or Shadow Jump. It also gives you a focus pool of 1 point if you don't already have one. With Dance of Darkness, for 2 actions, you can stride up to half your speed and create a 20-foot burst of darkness where you stop moving. How long this darkness lasts depends on your performance check. Anywhere from a round to 1 minute. Shadow Jump allows you to teleport between areas of dim light or darkness. You can go up to 120 feet with this ability. You cannot, however, take any other creatures with you, even if they're in an extra-dimensional space. This feat is pretty situational, but not as situational as you might think. You do have to start and end your movement in dim light or darkness. But you can pretty easily create that with spells, and if you're underground, it's even easier. But if you're outside during the day, this probably isn't going to work very well. But it could, depending on what kind of shadows are around. At level 14, we've got additional Shadow Magic. This allows you to pick up the other spell that you didn't pick up for Shadow Magic. So yes, you can pick up both of those spells. You just have to take 2 feats for it. This feat also does increase your focus pool by 1 point. Also at level 14, you can get another focus spell by taking Shadow Illusion. With this focus spell, you can create a shadowy creature or object. But if the illusion is ever out of dim light or darkness, the spell ends. If the illusion is an object, it can be up to a 20 foot by 20 foot square, and same thing for a creature. The illusion appears to animate naturally. It generates the appropriate sounds and smells, and even feels believable to the touch, but its color is always muted. If the illusion is a creature, this spell works like illusory creature, except that the illusion deals 2d8 damage plus your spellcasting ability modifier, rather than the damage listed in illusory creature. Any creature that interacts with the illusion can attempt a perception check to disbelieve. So you can very easily trick people with this spell, especially if they have low perception checks. This feat also makes you an expert in occult spell attack rolls and DCs. And finally, for level 14, we've got Unending Emptiness, which gives you what, in my opinion, is the best darkness-based focus spell in the entire game. The Dark Light Domain spell creates a 20-foot burst of darkness within 120 feet. However, what makes this darkness unique is that light does not enter or leave the area. In addition, even creatures with dark vision can barely see through this darkness. Creatures in the darkness are concealed to them, but creatures with greater dark vision can see normally. But let's be honest here, there's hardly any creatures that have greater dark vision. In addition, creatures that move into the area or start their turn in the area must make a basic fortitude saving throw against 2d6 bludgeoning damage and 2d6 negative damage. However, what really makes this spell amazing is that when you cast the spell, you can choose up to 4 creatures. Until the spell ends, these creatures are immune to damage from the dark light and can see through it normally, as though they had greater dark vision. This spell does take 3 actions to cast. However, if you can keep the enemy in the dark light with something like a wall spell, then they're taking that damage every round. And you can make any melee allies that are in the darkness immune to its effects, making this a fantastic option to help out the rogue in your party. And of course, the final feat for the Shadowcaster archetype is Shadow Power. This feat allows you to cast Shadow Blast as an innate occult spell once per day, but its level is always 1 lower than your other Shadowcaster focus spells. You also do get expert in occult spell attack rolls and DCs. Unfortunately, this feat does not stack with Shadow Magic. So if you have both feats, you're still only an expert in occult spell attack rolls and DCs. If you don't know, Shadow Blast allows you to do 5d8 damage of any type except negative and positive to all creatures in a 30-foot cone, 50-foot burst within 120 feet, or a 50-foot line. You choose the type of damage and its area when you cast this spell. However, because the damage is part illusion, the target can make a basic reflex or will save, its choice. So this spell gives you great versatility for the price of the enemy getting to choose what save they use. But no matter what, this does hit multiple enemies. You're more than likely going to want to use this spell on enemies that have high fortitude saving throws, as this will bypass that. And that's going to do it for the Shadowcaster archetype. Be sure you guys check out my Shadowcaster Druid build coming soon. In the meantime, if you want to build a Mirror Thaumaturge, you can check out this video here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, teamwork is vital.